Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Co-host Rich Gear here, and we have a guest with us. Eric, glad to have you.
Nice to be back.
Back on the show. He's kind of dressed a little bit nicer than we are, but that's all right. Well,
Derek Marshall is the name.
Derek Marshall. I'm sorry. I never called him my last name.
Thanks a lot.
I figured you guys are.
Buddy.
Yeah, I know, terrible. That's about the most conversation you might get out of me for the rest of the show. They're going to be dealing with periodic table of elements.
That's true.
Numbers,
yes, we are.
both of which are not my favorite thing here. So I'm going to try to act like this is I'm not the kids listening to adults in a peanut cartoon.
Okay.
You know that.
Believe it or not, yes, the peanut gallery.
No, when they go wah 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 wah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what.
I'm going to start going wah wah wah.
Yeah, you'll do all right. My brain checks out when some of this stuff comes in here. So let's see if you can make this sensible so an adult like me can figure this out.
Well, actually, we had a little detail on this on a previous show, but at the time I could only stumble through 72 of the elements. The idea is that there's a structure in the Bible. It's called the Molten Sea. It was an element of Solomon's temple. And it's a very important element because it's where the priests would wash their feet before they would proceed into the Holy of Holies. Well, anyway, we talked about this, and at the time, I've known about this structure for over 10 years that I've been teaching about it. And but I could only account for 72 of the elements, and that's what we talked about on the previous show. But when because you were the one that was asking me, pressing me about it. Well, does it do this one, this one, this one? And I'm like, yeah, but it only goes up to here. Well, here about three months ago in a hotel room in Poland, I had a day that I was working on this, and I wanted to know whether the rest of the periodic table, the entire periodic table, was represented by this model structure.
Does that include the fake elements?
Including the fake elements.
I always call the fake ones.
So I went for the whole enchilada. I looked at it, calculating it up and down, looking at everything, trying to find what I call the f-orbitals, and which are, the f-orbitals are 14 elements long. And I was looking for the 14. So I finally found the 14. I'll explain a little later where the 14 is. And then I thought, well, if I have the 2s and the 6s and the 10s, and now I got the 14, I should be able to get the last 32 elements. And it didn't take me very long to realize I was going 32, 32, that number is so familiar. And then I realized that the very top structure, which we'll talk about a little later, the brim is actually 31.4, and there's a reason why it's not exactly 32. So then I had the entire periodic table. But we're going to go through it step by step, and I'll tell you where all these measurements come from.
What I want to establish, first of all, is why is there a connection in the first place, and how did you discover this connection with the Molten Sea and the periodic table? My guess is that God has a certain design for everything that He's put together. There's a pattern to His ways, and then I think in your creation function is what you're trying to establish, is that there is a pattern to which God designed all of His creation. It's kind of
it was not a straight path, I'll tell you that. The creation function came first, which got me a model, a mathematical model in the shape of a spiral, which generates a table of numbers, which concurs with the first 3 periods of the periodic table. And then that led me to the Noah's Ark, which is a full comprehensive atomic and nuclear model. But it also has aspects, being a temple, the Ark was a temple because it's a place where man met God. It has aspects of the human anatomy behind it, which also mirrors Adam's actually model human aspects also, and aspects of animals, in the character between different atoms, how they react with one another. So then I thought, let's look more closely at temples. So I was starting to look at temples, and I stumbled upon Solomon's temple, and I was looking at the measurements of the laver, or otherwise known as the Molten Sea, and I noticed a pattern of numbers, this 30, 30, and 10, and 12. I recognize that as the periodic table. Mm-hmm. The s-orbital, the p-orbital, the d-orbital, those have the 2 or 8 and 6 and 10 and that pattern of numbers. I just happen to know they add up to 72. So that that clued me in on, hey, I got a periodic table type pattern. I didn't take it any farther than that, though, at that time. But a few years later, and I was satisfied with it, and I would just kind of include it in my talks about, about how the Bible brings out the periodic table. Then when I wanted to write my Derek's Desk issue, I focused on it a little bit deeper, prayed about it a little bit harder, and because in all my research, God has always provided the full answer. He's never given me partial answers. I always get the full answer, and I always get more than I expect.
Yeah.
So I prayed about that for this Molten Sea, and it came to me in a hotel room in Poland, of all places. And I wrote it all down, and I got it figured out. And here's what I want to present to you today: is how this bowl shape, which is it's a bowl. It's made of brass. It's 10 cubits in diameter. It's 5 cubits high, and it has some characteristics to it. It has two 30-cubit, I guess, straps or bands associated on that's on it right underneath the lip, and it has 12. It's resting on the back of 12 cattle, or yes, is it 8 cattle?
No, it's 12.
You're looking. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's 12.
Yes, 4 times 12. Yes, 12 cattle. 3 are pointing in each direction of the 4 directions for a total of 12. And because I get the 6 and the 12 mixed up, whether it's 6 or 12. Well, anyway, so I had that basic structure down, and so what I wanted to do is go through how each of these measurements have a one-to-one correspondence with the periodic table. Right. And we'll go through step by step here. Now the 12 oxen, I have a diagram. You may want to throw that diagram up on the monitor. But the 12 oxen, which is represented by yellow, represents the 6 s-orbitals, and each s-orbital has 2 elements in it. So that 6 times 2 is 12. So that takes care of all the s-orbitals from the first period to the 6th period. So we can, and also there's a periodic table of the elements you may want to throw up that has a color coding. The yellow elements are circled, which ones that we can mark off, if those are covered by the laver. And then the next, it'll tell you a little bit about the s-orbitals. They help make up the valence shell, and they assist in covalent bonding, which is electron sharing. And something that's cool about this structure is that the cattle are not part of the bowl. And the bowl has angular measurements. Of course, as the angular measurements are round, and it also has angular measurements this way, which we'll talk about why those are significant later. But the cattle are separate from that. And it's interesting that the s-orbitals...
So the bowl rests on the cattle?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yes.
And why is that important?
It's important because the s-orbitals do not have a certain type of angular momentum that the other orbitals do. And that's because the cattle are just on a single plane. Now you have nodes going out, kind of like if you drop a pebble in water, you have waves that in all directions that form concentric circles. You have that, but you don't have any other type of angular momentum or angular features as to the pattern of the electrons, that the shape the electron cloud is around the nucleus. So that is what we call a qualitative feature of this bowl with the oxen, is that the oxen don't give a certain type of angular momentum that all the other...
When you say angular momentum, I really do not...
You can call it...
what does that mean,
It forms the shape. You know how you have an electron cloud around a nucleus? No. Yes. Well, the nucleus is actually very, very small, and everything is made up of is actually electrons. Everything
that goes around.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's kind of like the moon. Kind of like how the moon orbits the Earth.
Right.
The Earth is small in relative to the big orbit of the moon around it.
So when I'm thinking about it as an orbit, I'm always thinking about pretty much linear, like the Unity-shaped shell. I'm thinking 3-dimensional. I'm thinking going this way as well as this way.
Right.
This way or any.
So the electron can be anywhere, according to quantum mechanics, can be anywhere that it's going to be, according to calculations that are made in quantum mechanics. All the places that electron could be are, it's a percentage, it's a probability if the electron can be a certain place. And the probabilities for a hydrogen atom, for instance, is that it can be in a circular, all the places that an electron can be would make a circular pattern around
Okay,
the
all right,
nucleus.
that's what I was
I'm
getting
talking
at. I
about.
wanted to-
So the quantum mechanics on the next thing, the
I didn't
p-orbital,
realize that, actually.
is they're more lobe-shaped. You have lobes that come off 90 degrees from each other. Okay, so for the p-orbital, not only do you have this 90-degree separation, just like the cattle are separated at 90 degrees, but you also have a curvy shape, which is going to be formed by angles. And just like the bowl has, not only does it have a 360-degree aspect to it, but it also has this type of angular aspect to it. So the p-orbitals are shown in blue on this periodic table, and that's represented by the first 30 cubit ring around the bowl. Okay, so that 30 cubit ring is 30 elements. So we have...
That's 30 cubit circumference?
Yes, 30 cubit circumference. It's called out directly. I'm not talking about the top brim yet. That's the last thing we're going to talk about. It's called out directly as 300 nops, 10 in a cubit. So that's 30 cubits. And the 5 orbitals, the 5 p-orbitals of 6 elements each is the 30. So that covers the 30. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the p-orbitals. These do have what's called L and M values, which are magnetic moments and both types of angular momentum. So that's basically all I have on that. They're also instrumental in ionic bonding, which is a slightly different type of bonding that's more prevalent as you approach the right side of the periodic table as opposed to the
ionic
left.
bonding such as sodium and chlorine and...
Yes,
and
the formation of salts. Okay, so that's the blue elements, which are the p elements, or the p orbitals. So the next one is the green, is another 30. So we have 2 bands of 30. The green band of 30 is my 3 d-orbitals, which are among those. So you have d-orbitals that are 10 elements each, multiply that by 3 is another 30. So we're filling up the periodic table pretty fast, and so far we've knocked out 72 of the 118 elements.
So that takes
and
you
that's
to
as far, that takes us to where we were talking about last time.
Okay.
Takes you to lead, right?
That takes you almost to lead.
Okay.
Takes you to element 72, which I'm not even sure which one that is. I'd have to look myself. But the 72 by itself isn't necessarily important. It's just that this is where we left off last time on our last show.
Okay.
So the challenge was, my prayer to God at the time when I was preparing this was, there's more orbitals. We have orbitals called the f-orbitals, which are 14 each, 14 elements each. I could not see the f-orbitals in there, and I wasn't satisfied that this bowl was just half a periodic table. So I looked at it, I looked it up and down, sideways, forwards, and then finally it dawned on me that the half shape of the bowl is half of 30. 30 cubits is 15. That's really close to 14. So I'm thinking it's really close. I mean, what?
There's no cigar yet.
It's no cigar yet. I'm not satisfied with it yet.
Yeah.
Then I realized, and I read further in the Bible about the shape of this bowl, is that the shape of the bowl is like this. If you were to cut it in half, it's like this, and it's fluted on the ends.
Okay.
And this thickness, the thickness of the metal was 1 hand breadth. Well, my hand is 3 inches across. 1 hand breadth is 3 inches. So actually, so 3 inches. If you want to use an 18-inch cubit, 3 hand breadths, 1, 2, 3, is half a cubit. That'd be 9 inches, half a cubit.
Okay.
So if you have a hand breadth of the thickness of the metal, then a hand breadth of the first band, and then a hand breadth of the second band, that's half a cubit. Then you have both sides as a full cubit. So you subtract that cubit from 15, because that eats up part of the semicircle.
Oh, okay. All right.
That gives you your 14. That's where I found my f-orbital.
Now, I'm going to interject in here. The Molten Sea is something that the skeptics seem to always want to use to say that the measurements that was given to it is inaccurate. It doesn't compute out to pi correctly.
Right.
And you're going to address that one, and
Yes.
also the problem where I think it's Kings, where it mentions that it's
Yeah.
2,000 baths, and the other
Right.
one says it's 3,000 baths.
Yes, we'll address both those.
So maybe we'll as
Okay,
you
so let's
go
go
on.
for it. Let's address the 30 cubits and the pi cubits. All right, so the 30 cubit bands are called out as 30 cubits. Those are measured, they're saying these bands are 30 cubits, so we're given that. And in my little hand drawing here, the fluted top, the top, very top is the brim.
Yeah.
Now that's the one everybody has a problem with. The brim is 10 cubits across, which, given with pi, gives you 31.4 circumference. And we're going to talk
Right.
about that in a few seconds, in a few minutes. Okay, so that's the problem everybody has. But that brim is here, then it's fluted. Okay, so then the bands are in here. The bands
Yeah.
are a shorter circumference.
Right, it's just.
Can you see my
Because it's thicker at the top.
Yes.
So it actually works out,
it
right?
works out. It works out very well.
And so the measurement of the circumference of 30 was for the bands.
Yes.
But the measurement across the top is
Of the brim is 10, is the 10 diameter,
Yeah.
given a circumference
Because you
of
got an extra thickness up there on the
31.4.
top, on the brim. Because
Yes.
it kind of.
Because it's fluted.
It comes out and it goes in like that or whatever.
Yeah, you probably have a cup here, somewhere around here that
Yeah.
has a fluted whatever, to illustrate it better. So let's talk about the baths. Well, I calculated the capacity, the volumetric capacity of my bowl is 1938. It's 1,938 baths. You know, so it's really close. It's 99% or something of 2,000.
Yeah.
Okay. But in Second Chronicles, it talks about this must have a capacity of 3,000 baths, which 2,000 and 3,000 are way too different.
Way
So you have to
different,
figure
yeah.
out what is going on with that difference. Everybody's like, oh, the Bible has
The copyist here is usually what it says.
right? So what they don't realize is this structure is huge. I mean, it's like way big. It's like way up in the air. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's-
it's 5 cubits. It's, you know,
Yeah,
15 feet.
it's a swimming,
Yeah.
Or, you know,
it's a
So
swimming pool. is
people
what-
aren't going to be sticking their foot, trying to get their foot up inside this bowl.
Right.
The water, the structure of it is this apparatus sat in this stone pulley type of thing, where the water also had a volume down here.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you're going to have a 2,000 approximately volume here, and it's feasible that you would have approximately another 1,000 baths, so the priests could put their foot in it
Okay.
easily.
All right.
There's going to be water down here.
What was the water? Why was there water up in the bowl itself then? You know, if you couldn't even get in it.
It would be gravimetric feeding. You know, it would give the water a head pressure so it could be flowing. That's why you would want the water up, just like we have water towers.
Okay. Oh, you mean
Yeah.
were there holes in it or something to come out or something?
Yeah, it has some sort of plumbing
Okay.
in the cattle, which is probably,
Oh, I see.
that's actually a good point, which I didn't even think about. How did the water get out of the bowl? That gives me
Into
something
the-
to
into
think
the lower
about.
structure.
See, there's more detail to this than we're going to be able to get into.
Yeah. But the point of it is, what you're showing is that everything in the scripture, when it deals with so precision with numbers, relates some typological, or even almost it's not, I would say metaphorical, but typological to something that's real in our physical creation. I saw something in the article talk about there's a 1-to-1 correlation between the body and the temple. You know, so
Yep.
there's things between the temple and our human body it's typological. In other words, there's a symbolic aspect of it, or it's telling you something about what he's created, and it relates. Is that what you're getting here with this whole?
That's even just part of it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of it.
No,
That's one aspect
wouldn't the
of it.
skeptics say, oh, that's just a coincidence? They haven't.
Well, what is a
Or you're finding
coincidence?
what you want to find, or whatever.
We'll talk about the last. We're not even done talking about the feature of this. We have 32 elements more to cover on this.
Well, I think you got to the 118.
Nope, I didn't get to 118
Okay.
yet. So I'm like at 90. I'm thinking I'm at radium or so. So the top. So after I got the f orbital, the 14 that I was asking God for, I thought, well, I've got everything else. The last 32 elements have to be there. And I was like, 32, that's so familiar. Where does this number come from? And then I remembered the pi aspect, is if you have a brim which is 10 cubits across, the circumference is going to be 31.4, which is very close to 32. And I'm thinking, oh, it's not quite 32. I mean, it's close. So I just kind of put that aside for a second until I realized, yes, that takes me all the way to element 118, which was just discovered a few years ago, I believe it was. It's called OG or Oganesson. I think that's how you say it. But I was like, okay, so we got something really close. Let's do a little bit of research on this Oganesson. So I looked it up. Didn't have to look very far. In fact, some researcher here in Michigan State put out an article about Oganesson, and this has to do. And this, what I'm finding out is this what I call new creation research is getting out in front of discoveries that have already been made. And I have this, and I have other aspects of things that I've been able to discover before they've been discovered, or things that are still under investigation. I truly believe that creation research should take the lead in research, period, in scientific research. I'm finding it to be true in atoms. So to illustrate my point, is there was a 2017 article from Peter Schwarzenegger of Massey University in New Zealand and Witold Nazarowicz of Michigan State University. They were researching this element, Oganesson, which is the final element. It actually completes the 7th period of the periodic table. So it's like it's made a complete table. But they're looking at these electrons, and they're saying, hey, these electrons aren't like any other element that has nice, stable electron shells that complete the atom. And they call that, boom, okay, there's an atom there. It has a complete set of shells, has a complete set of protons, neutrons, what have you, boom. And it lived for a millisecond. Great, we discovered an element. But here, this Oganesson, and I have another picture you may want to put up, has this fuzziness to, there doesn't have distinct electron shells. It doesn't form distinct electron shells. It runs into relativistic problems with the existence of the electron shells. And so therefore it's very hard for this element to be complete. It's there, but it's not quite complete because it doesn't have its electron shells. And that's where the 31.4 comes in. It's like, I would interpret that, and I do interpret that as being, there's something there, there's room for something to be there, but it's not complete. And even more than that is to talk a little bit about the nature of this band that was around the top. That was worked by man into leaf shapes. So this, if you folded it down, it's going to split, and you're going to pound that and make by hand man-made leaf shapes. And it's in a circle. So what is up there is not necessarily, first of all, it's man-made, just like these elements in the 7th period are man-made elements. It's not certain what's going to be there. It's whatever man decides to pound with his hammer to make there. So
that's interesting.
That's interesting. It reminds you, I don't even know this, maybe it doesn't correlate. It reminds you of the time when the guy, I can't remember which king it was, he told him to tap your stick, and then the guy tapped it 3 times. He goes, oh no, you should have tapped it a bunch of times. That's how many times you defeat your enemy. He didn't tell him that until after he tapped it. It's like, why don't you tell me that before I tapped it? I didn't know. So he tapped it 3 times. If he tapped like 20 times, it's like man is determining what the outcome of something's going to be. It's almost like that's what you're saying on these elements. It's like, that's kind of wild.
No, this element 43 end up in this man-made element, but it's sort of sitting there amongst all these other stable elements. Does that fit in your man-made stuff?
Well, the thing about this bowl is this bowl has capacity. That's what it's made for. It's made to hold things. And the message that I get from this bowl is that this is the capacity to have elements, which would include all 118. So yes, 43 and element 61 can exist there because there's capacity for them to exist there. Even if they're not stable, they can still exist there.
Well, it's interesting because you think about, and this goes like some of the Russ Humphrey's argument, one of the biblical statements is everything was formed out of water. And what does the bowl contain?
Well, a bunch of water. And that's a perfect point, Rich, because...
hydrogen and oxygen, which are two unstable elements, but they come together to become one of the most stable of things.
Right.
I think there's everything about that water is just amazing.
The water, we haven't even touched on with the significance of the water.
Yeah.
You can write a book about the chemistry of water, be 500 pages thick.
Yep. But also, and it leads credence to what Rich is saying, is this bowl represents the earth. And there's a lot of scripture to back that up. But it's a place just like, it's the place where the priest washes his feet before he meets God. The earth is where we wash in the blood of Christ before we meet God. So the earth is a washing place. There's also other scripture that says that the earth is half in and half out of the water. So you have this half shape that's full of water. You know, so there's a lot of similarities, even more similarities than I can really talk about in this show.
Well, it's made out of brass or bronze, right?
Yes, which is another earth number. It's another earth.
Well, bronze is also a symbol. I mean, when you do a temple, things like that, gold is a sort of a type for divinity. Brass is really a sign of sacrifice, or it's like you have to go through the bronze laver, you know, where you sacrifice. So the bowl is made out of that. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that out of strife and out of suffering or out of we come out. Right. And we get cleansed, and that's the whole idea of the bronze laver.
That's true.
You know?
That's very true. And plus, this research does not live in an island. It's not just all by itself. Maybe in later shows when I start talking more about the arc structure, this pre-shadows or foreshadows the arc structure. Nobody asks the question, other than trying to find the ark, where is it on the earth now? Nobody asks the question in a spiritual manner, what happened to the ark after everybody left it? Something very important did happen to the ark after everybody left it.
Okay.
And, well, for example, I'll give you a couple teasers here. The ark is a seed, just like Christ was a seed that was planted into the earth. The ark is a seed that's planted into the earth. And the earth and the ark sprang forth with animals, people, and the structure, atomic structure that we know about now. So it has a living aspect that exists today, right now.
Well, Derek, we're going to publish your work out on our website.
Okay,
so
thank
that
you.
people
need
can
to know. I dressed
see
up, I wore my best suit because I consider this probably among my best work, my best finds right here.
Groundbreaking, I'll tell you
Yes,
that.
it is.
And so
You won't read about this anywhere else on the planet. I guarantee
So if you go to rae.org, our website, maybe in the next 2 or 3 months, hopefully you'll have your article available for us so that we can
well, I don't know if you would publish this Derek's Test issue.
I can
maybe
do that,
put up the
yes.
link or whatever. But yes, I do believe that this should be an actual article because this is a very meaty subject that you could publish easily a 30-page, fully researched, fully annotated article on this subject. Really get into the calculations, get into the archives and what have you to find out everything you want to about this.
Well, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.